and appropriate transitions. For our guests here tonight, we do have forums in the middle there. When you're listening to the speech, you can have a little think, what is done well, what do you feel could have been done better? And we'll have time to fill them in after the speech. So, with a speech entitled, Things Are Not What They Seem, please welcome Maria McMahon.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome friends. Have you ever found yourself making conclusions about some things and then realizing later that you've made a mistake? For instance, I'll show you a firefly. How many knows that a firefly is not actually a fly? It is a beetle. How many knows that a koala bear is not really a bear, but a marsupial, correct? And a guinea pig is not from Guinea and is not a pig. It's actually a rodent from South America. Now I'm going to show you two illustrations. The first is this. How many can see a menacing tiger? How many can see an enchanted forest? How many can see a crouched tiger in an enchanted forest? Another one would be this one, this illustration. How many see a face of an old man? Good. How many see Don Quixote and the windmills? Brilliant. Isn't that interesting? Different people see different things on one particular illustration. See, some things are not what they seem. Similarly, I made judgments in the past about people and character simply on the basis of their outward appearance. And I found myself making mistakes doing that. Although they say that first impressions do count, true, but first impressions also can be misleading. I remember the time when I was young and my father took me out in the country to see a cattle auction. It was in the middle of nowhere. He was wearing his favorite faded shorts, his hideous holy t-shirt, and his grubby pair of rubber sandals. And we were leaning along the steel railing waiting for the new batch of cattle to come when a tall, immaculately dressed gentleman came and tapped him on the shoulder. They had a wee laugh and talked about the good old days. Happened to be an old pal of his in his law school before. And before he left, he quickly gave my dad a roll of pesos and quickly started off. A few weeks later, they met up again, now this time in the city, and both were wearing very dignified business suits. His friend was so shocked at first, and then amused, and then horrified that he duped himself giving my dad 500 pesos, thinking that he was needing of a dole out. He demanded his 500 pesos back. But see, some things are not what they seem. Sometimes when we make judgments, we make it on our limited perspective of people, places, and things. This reminds me of the story, the classic story of these two Jewish givers. One gave out of his abundance, when one gave all in her poverty. I asked, how can we tell that they did that? I like to quote from the classic book, The Little Prince, where the fox told the little prince, it's very simple. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. See, some things are not what they seem. I'd like to share a story, a moving story that I heard weeks before, which inspired me to do this topic tonight. It's the story of a little girl who was embarrassed to see with her mother. Her mother was scarred and a bit deformed. One night when the mother was tucking the little girl to bed, the little girl asked her mother, "Why are you not as pretty as the other mothers?" The mother said, looked into her eyes and said, "You know, because when you were a baby, our house caught on fire. I had to rescue you. I had to cuddle you and cover you and rush you back to safety. But you know what? I was all right, because I'd rather it was me who got scarred and burned, and that you were all right." The little girl raised her tiny fingers and traced her mother's scars and said, "My friends say my mother looks like a witch." The mother grabbed her little hand and placed it in her little chest and said, "What does your heart say, dear?" The little girl jumped up and gave her mother a great big hug. Some things are not what they seem. I would like to advocate that we should always try to look beyond the outer appearance, beyond the veneer. For when we do, we can be surprised to find countless treasures and concealed realities that will begin to reveal themselves to us, if we but remember that some things are not what they seem.